Hello there, everybody. Welcome back, and Sailor's here.
Ow!
And we're here to be talking about the new Michael Jackson film, simply titled Michael. And it's basically, I guess you could say, the first half of his life, back when he, got his humble start, when he, went into the Jackson 5, and then when he went off on his own, and obviously, made iconic music after iconic music, but it also delves into the more complicated side, specifically with the relationship with his father, and how he was as a person and stuff. They kind of dive into that, and of course recreates a lot of the iconic stuff that we knew and loved from that period. And so it starts from the early period, and I believe the final period for this film is the Bad, when he made the song Bad during that era. But we hear that there's going to be a sequel. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It says at the end his story continues, and I'm very glad that it does that, because a lot of people say it feels like it ended so abruptly, but as somebody who grew up in theater and who really loves musicals, it feels like a very satisfying ending to a first act. So if you look at this movie like a musical, this is a really great first act to rope you in, and then the final payoff is going to be at the end of the finale.
And I think it's also safe to say that we're going to dive into some spoilers, even though really we've all seen, a bunch of these, music videos. We've seen a lot of this stuff, but there may be some stuff that could be considered spoilery. But I think to give the, film justice, to really dive into some parts, there's going to be some spoiler aspects, so be warned. But I do want to say, let's just get it out of the way with, the main part that even people who hate the film, which there are a lot of negative responses, as you can see, here. I always use Rotten Tomatoes as the go-to the show, but you can see a vast difference where the audiences obviously love it and the critics don't, and we have our reasons as to why, many different reasons. But the main point that everyone agrees with is Jafar Jackson, the nephew of Michael Jackson, probably one of the best performances I've seen in a long time, because it feels like you're watching Michael Jackson in so many different ways. From different, just from the music video perspectives, in particular Thriller, which, you could just see here. This just... It just feels like you're actually watching. I said this as a joke, but I'm so serious. It feels like the Mona Lisa being painted. That's what it feels like when you watch parts of this film.
And to me, it's almost like myth making, this is the man, the legend. This is the story of how this came together, showing how genius he was with the dancing, having him be extremely visibly like an autistic genius, misunderstood by the world. They covered it like the amazing rise of a truly brilliant star. They, I think, did sanitize things, because all of the living members of the Jackson family, if you notice in the movie, they take all of the being a bad guy, all of the, anybody doing anything wrong, and they put it on the dad. And yeah, he was a monster. And
he was bad to, everyone in the family. There's even one line where it sounded like they kind of disowned one of the sons, one of the siblings of Michael, because he didn't follow the family. And they were like, well, we're going to tour without, I think it was Jermaine, they said, who I believe is the dad of Jafar, ironically enough. And they're like, well, he made his bed when he decided to stay, where, we came from and all. So they obviously paint the dad as the bad guy, which, Coleman Domingo, I gotta give him his shout out, because we keep seeing him in a lot of different stuff. I remember he was in Fear the Walking Dead, the spinoff show. He was great there. There's a bunch of other stuff, but he truly, enters the role as well. If anything, even if the film's panned, you gotta give recognition to him for Best Supporting, and then Jafar for Best Actor, because they both kind of carry the film, especially, every time he enters, on screen, you just feel this sense of dread. Even if he's not being physically abusive, just you fear his presence on the screen, and it's just really uncomfortable, and just a testament.
The little bit that you have seen makes such a lasting impact that even the reference to it, or the possibility of it happening when he appears, he's just so viscerally menacing. But the mother is painted as if she's the exact total opposite of him, almost like a saint or an angel figure. But I understand it when they were entirely financially dependent on him, but the fact that she never tried to intervene, that she just sit there and took it and didn't try to get help, didn't try to take the kids and run, you know.
Yeah, and that's not
it
to
feels very sanitized.
And that's not to discredit, like, she obviously meant a lot to Michael, because I have seen, like, a lot of stuff where he loves his mom. Like, not his, he's talked bad about his dad in clips I've seen, but he genuinely, like, really loves his mom. But there were moments, and just from an outsider observing in, that she probably could have stepped up in a better way to protect these kids.
Yes. Although I do think that if you sort of see the story as coming from the point of view of somebody that grew up watching Michael Jackson closely and intimately, you know, because he wanted to regain a sense of innocence and childhood, and he loved kids and stuff, you can understand why it seems right, and it just fits, and it kind of amplifies the character of Michael Jackson from, like, showing how he sees the world as well as who he is.
And there's also a lot of references to, you know, obviously when he was a kid reading, you know, Peter Pan, Neverland. Obviously Neverland is going to probably be a big focal point in the second film, and where a lot of the controversies and stuff goes, but it shows a lot of why he just really loves kids, mainly because there's, like, he wasn't never able to have, like, a normal kid life. He was never able to have friends his age. They looked to him as, like, I wouldn't say an object, but, like, as someone that's, like, you're like, it's Michael. Like, he can never just have friends his age. And I believe there's a moment where he says that the animals are his friends. He had so many different animals, like, you know, I believe Bubbles, which was, like, the monkey, right? And a llama. And he had, like, a bunch of different, you know, snakes. And so, you know, and, like, and I feel like the film is maybe a little bit subtle. Like, I've heard a bunch of critiques, besides a lot of people hating that it doesn't dive into the allegations and their, you know, conceived notions of Michael, so they hate the film for that reason. It also doesn't show more of the creative and, like, more in-depth process of him making it. But there's moments that I can think of that combat that a bit. Like, for example, the Beat It section, where he, you know, goes and is creating it, and, like, how he's trying to come up with the lyrics and all. He saw, like, art, like a news thing about gang violence, and he gets rival gangs and is explaining what he's trying to do and bring them together. Stuff like that was great. There could have been a bit more, I guess, but it's kind of like how I was talking with my sister before we started filming, how when you see the dad, you know, beat him over something so, like, nothing, like, he
said, I thought we did good.
And the dad was like, you're questioning my authority, and then everyone, the family's just shocked just watching it happen. You don't need to see that 5 times in the film. Seeing it once, it, like, sets the tone. He's an abusive dad. You don't need to keep seeing it. Kind of like how with the creative process, we don't need to see him go to his room and come up with each song that he came up with. Seeing it once, I guess you probably want to see more, but I think seeing it that once shows this is how Michael is.
Yeah. And having it as one makes it really strong and powerful. It makes it, like, really
the scene more memorable because it's that one scene. Like, seeing them recreate, when they recreated, like, the Thriller sequence, it would have been cool to see them recreate the other music videos, because that's his main thing besides the music, was he loved to create, like, a performance for the audience. And I think the music video for Thriller stands out so much because that was his grand, like, magnum opus. That was, like, the big video with a big time director, very controversial person in his own right, the John Landis dude. But, and also, I do want to say, like, a character that kind of got a lot of role in the film was, I believe, his bodyguard, who I believe was a retired LAPD police officer from what I saw. And he's kind of there in a lot of the film, you know, being there for Michael, driving in places, you know, shooting, you know, ideas off with him about how he wants to handle, you know, his dad and his dynamics. And I've seen, like, a lot of people really delve into this guy. Like, this is, like, a really important dude in his life. So I just wanted to say, you know, I thought that actor did a really good job, and it was interesting seeing something that I didn't really know about. I never really knew about this guy, but it seemed pretty interesting. I thought, like, another critique that I will kind of say is kind of, you know, understandable is how it ends kind of abruptly, because we do know that there was a lot of reshoots and, you know, issues behind the scenes about the film. But the hope is that they do a sequel if they can, because I know there's a lot of controversy in the second part of his life. But, I mean, if not, I still think this was a fantastic film that, you know, shows a lot of
Undoubtedly.
how Michael was. Like, you saw he was this kind of, I don't want to say socially awkward, but he was just kind of like, there was moments
shy,
where
a little bit awkward.
Yeah, like there's
you know?
even during the thriller, he's the star. He's the one creating this video. He was asking someone to ask the director to like, hey, could you let him know I want it to be zoomed out, because showing, you know, the feet is like part of like the experience, like showing how I'm doing the dance moves. Yeah, sure, I'll tell him, instead of just saying I want to tell him myself. He still had other people, and that kind of like was a running theme throughout the film. He was too scared to like, you know. So
he was terrified of any conflict because
Yes.
he's so abused that he is like trained to try to avoid getting in trouble, trying to avoid making people mad, trying to avoid conflict.
And it's you really sympathize with him a lot in this film, especially how he didn't want to do the Pepsi thing, and his dad was like strong arming him, threatening, like saying, "You're gonna turn against the family. You're gonna go against your
emotional manipulation."
And because of that, that was where like that injury where he had his scalp burned. Like that whole.
And the father didn't even care.
He was like, well, he's gonna be able to perform, right? And that's what made it satisfying at the end, which I know a lot of people say was kind of abrupt and all. How it ended with him saying, you know, we're done with the tours and all that, and he was staring.
It felt triumphant. It felt like a victory. It felt, like I said, like a triumphant conclusion of a first act. But you know, there's a lot more to come. Like, if you look at it more from a theatrical point of view, as opposed to a cinematic point of view, it works really well.
But yeah, the film all around I thought was really solid. The performances, mainly from Jafar and Coleman, carried the film to like a great level. The recreation,
feel the menacing presence of the father, and it's like even when he's the famous one, he can't lay his hands on him anymore. He's still conditioned these people in their minds to live in so much fear of him.
Yeah, and how the film, like, just besides the performances, like how like a lot of the cinematography is recreating like pure identical, the costume work that went into this, like so much feels like you're watching it live, like you're there. And that kind of elevates the film, even if some other parts a lot of people would say is kind of weak and stuff. But overall, I thought this was a really great film that I highly recommend. I know my sister probably recommends. And
another critique, though, one last thing, is that he struggled with perfectionism, which made him like very like particular about his body and very insecure from a very young age. And in the movie, it kind of seemed like he just looked at himself in the picture one time and goes, "Oh, I don't like that," and then you know, gets that taken care of, and then he looks totally normal. I feel like they could have gone into some of the like anguish that Michael Jackson was experiencing, you know, some of the like of like the perfectionism. I do know that it touches on it. I could use a little bit more of that so you could see, because he was such a happy, bright, like shining light, that sometimes you forget how dark it is inside in his heart, you know, the things he's had to experience. And also they probably could have not to dive into like religion, but they probably could have delved into his conflictions with, you know, leaving the Jehovah's Witness. I'm pretty sure he tried to distance himself from that when, if you remember the Thriller video, he has that text at the beginning, which is like really him trying to distance himself from that and not wanting to like, you know, be a part of the, you know, the stuff. So, but I'm assuming his family's still well connected with it, so they didn't really delve into that much. So yeah, and they only time it was referenced in a positive way.
Exactly.
So you can really feel the like
there's some
of his family
hindrances.
On it. And in some ways that's amazing, because it's told from a perspective of just loving Michael Jackson, seeing the absolute best in him like you do a family member. It feels like it's from the family, but that has positives and negatives.
But with all that said, those were my thoughts on Michael. And what would you rate the film, Sailor?
Ow!
Exactly. So thank you all so much for giving a chance to check out this video. Have you been able to see Michael? Please let us know down below in the comment section. And if you want to hit the bell as well to subscribe to when I get uploaded, that would be so much to me. And thank you again, Sailor, for joining me. It means a lot.
You're welcome.
Again, thank you all so much, and we'll see you all in the next video. Bye.